The worn-out guitar case lay open on the cracked pavement, a few scattered coins glinting dully in the weak afternoon sun. Leo adjusted the mic stand, a wobbly relic he bought from a pawn shop. His voice, usually strong and clear, felt a little hoarse today. He'd been singing for hours, mostly his own songs, but the crowds weren't exactly lining up for original acoustic ballads. Not in this bustling city square anyway. Here people wanted something familiar, something that made them tap their feet or remember simpler times. And for Leo, there was only one king who could reliably open wallets. Elvis Presley. He cleared his throat, took a deep breath, and strummed the opening chords to "Can't Help Falling in Love." The notes, sweet and melancholic, drifted through the urban hum. A few passers-by paused, some curious, others just waiting for the light to change. Leo closed his eyes for a moment. Letting the melody fill him when he opened them, he poured his heart into the lyrics. He wasn't just singing the words, he was feeling them. Every heartbreak, every yearning for connection. He wasn't Elvis, of course. He just had a decent voice, a beat-up guitar, and a dream that felt as distant as the moon. His dream wasn't about fame and fortune. Not really. It was about making people feel something, about sharing a piece of himself through music. But dreams didn't pay the rent, and they certainly didn't buy new guitar strings. The coins in the case rattled a pitiful tune. A few more people stopped, drawn in by the familiar melody. A young couple swayed gently. An elderly woman hummed along, a wistful smile on her face. He transitioned backly into Suspicious Minds, picking up the tempo. His fingers flew across the fretboard, and his voice took on a raw, passionate edge. He moved with the music. A slight sway, a confident tilt of his head. For a few minutes, he wasn't Leo, the struggling street performer. He was just a vessel for the music, letting it flow through him. He saw a few more coins drop into the case. A quarter, a couple of dimes, every little bit helped. He had enough for a cheap dinner tonight, maybe. The sun began to dip lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The crowds thinned slightly, people heading home from work. Leo felt a familiar ache in his throat, his fingers cramping a little. He decided to do one more song, a classic. To end the day, Jailhouse Rock was lively, energetic, a good way to leave people smiling. He grinned as he launched into it, putting all his remaining energy into the upbeat rhythm. He even managed a little hip wiggle just for fun. As he belted out the chorus, his eyes scanned the small group of people still gathered. He saw the usual mix: teenagers filming on their phones, a tired businessman checking his watch, a mother holding her child's hand. Then he saw him, standing a little apart from the rest, near the edge of the fountain, a man. Not just any man. He was tall, with broad shoulders, dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored suit that seemed out of place in the casual square. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he wore dark sunglasses, even though the sun was fading. What caught Leo's attention wasn't just the man's fancy clothes, but his posture. He stood perfectly still, his head tilted slightly, as if listening to every single note with an intensity that bordered on reverence. He wasn't smiling, wasn't tapping his foot. His presence was just powerful. Leo felt a strange jolt, a sudden awareness that this man wasn't just a casual listener. He was seeing something or hearing something. Leo felt a sudden surge of adrenaline. He didn't know why, but the man's presence made him sing with even more conviction. He hit every note with precision. Every guitar licked sharp and clean. Curious, was he someone important? A music executive? Unlikely. In a public square, he felt a weird connection, almost as if the man was testing him. He finished Jailhouse Rock with a flourish, a final ringing chord. The small crowd clapped politely. A few scattered cheers. Leo bowed, a genuine smile on his face. As he straightened up, he looked directly at the man. In the suit, the man took a slow, deliberate step. Forward, Leo's heart gave a little thump. Was he going to offer him a job, a record deal? His mind raced with wild pocket of his suit jacket. Leo watched, holding his breath. The man's hand emerged, not with a business card, but with something else, something green. He walked closer, his gaze unblinking behind the dark lenses. He didn't say a word. He just leaned down very slowly and dropped the folded green rectangle into Leo's open guitar case. Then, just as silently as he had approached, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the thinning crowd as quickly as a phantom. Leo stared at the guitar case. Amidst the dull copper and silver, a crisp emerald green bill lay like a beacon. His eyes widened. He knew what it was. $100 bill. A single, impossible Benjamin staring up at him from the bottom of his hat. He blinked, wondering if he was dreaming. This was more than he made in a week, sometimes two. Who was that man and why? Coins seemed to hum around the $100 note. A silent testament to the strange, incredible gift. Leo felt a tremor go through him. It wasn't just the money. It was the way the man had looked at him, the silent reverence, the intense presence. It felt like more than just a donation. It felt like a message. Leo's hands trembled slightly as he reached into the guitar case. He picked up the $100 bill, feeling its crispness, its undeniable reality. It wasn't a dream. It was right there in his hand, a shocking splash of green against the dull gray of the pavement. He held it up to the fading light, checking it for authenticity. It felt real, smelled real. His mind reeled. $100 for singing Elvis. It was unheard of. Usually he was lucky to get $1 or $2 from someone feeling generous, or a few coins from a parent trying to teach their child about charity. But this was monumental. He looked up, scanning the faces in the dwindling crowd. Had anyone else seen it? A few people were packing up their own street vendor carts, oblivious. Others were just walking by, lost in their own thoughts. No one seemed to have paid any particular attention to the man in the suit. He had moved like a ghost, appearing, dropping the money and vanishing. Who was he? Leo kept asking himself. He tried to recall more details about the man. His height, his build, the way his silver hair had gleamed under the artificial streetlights that were just beginning to flicker on the dark sunglasses. They had hidden his eyes completely, giving him an air of mystery, almost a disguise. But the suit, it was expensive. Custom-made, maybe. And the way he had moved with a quiet dignity, a deliberate grace, it was like he was a king, or someone used to commanding respect without saying a word. Leo felt a strange mix of exhilaration and unease. The money was incredible. It could solve so many problems. He could buy proper groceries. Not just instant noodles. Maybe even get that new set of guitar strings he'd been putting off. The way it had been given, it felt like a puzzle piece dropped into his life, with no picture to go with it. Carefully folded the $100 bill and tucked it into his wallet in a separate pocket from his meager collection of fives and ones it felt too special to mix in. He started packing up his gear, his movements a little clumsy, with his mind still racing. He wrapped his microphone, coiled his cables, and carefully closed the lid of his guitar case. He made sure the case was locked tight, a sudden surge of protectiveness over his unexpected fortune. As he walked away from the square, the city lights beginning to truly glow, he kept replaying the scene in his head. The man's unwavering gaze, the almost reverent way he had listened to the music. It was more than just appreciation. It was recognition. Did he know Leo? Had he seen him before? Leo racked his brain, but he couldn't place the face or what he could see of it behind the sunglasses. He thought about the song he'd been singing when the man appeared. Jailhouse Rock. It was an energetic, fun song. The man had been there for Can't Help Falling in Love, too. And Suspicious Minds. He'd listened to the whole mini-set. It made Leo wonder if the song choice mattered. Maybe the man had a special connection? No. Leo dismissed the thought a no. Leo dismissed the thought. He hadn't had the characteristic sideburns or the famous grin. He was too subtle, too refined. Unless it wasn't an impersonator, unless it was someone who knew Elvis, someone from his past, an old friend, a relative. The idea felt outlandish, but it lodged itself in Leo's mind. The way the man had looked at him, it was almost as if he was looking through him at something else, something Leo was channeling. He walked past a dimly lit cafe, catching his reflection in the window. A young man, a bit scruffy guitar case slung over his shoulder. He saw a flicker of the passion he poured into his music, the earnestness. Was that what the man had seen? Was it the spirit of the music, the way Leo felt every note that had moved him to such an extraordinary gesture? He arrived back at his small, one-room apartment. It was cramped, a little dusty, but it was his. He set his guitar case down gently, almost reverently. He took out the $100 bill again, placing it on his small, rickety table under the glow of a bare light bulb. It felt like a sacred object. Touched it just to feel its texture, to confirm its reality again. Sleep didn't come easy that night. His mind was a whirlwind of questions. He thought about Elvis, about his legend, his generosity. Elvis was known for giving away Cadillacs, for showering people with gifts. It was part of his charm, his larger-than-life persona. Could this be a small echo of that legendary generosity, a ripple from the past, finding its way to him? He pulled out his phone, scrolling through old photos of Elvis. He looked at pictures of Elvis, later in life, older, more refined. He tried to imagine the man from the square in those pictures. Couldn't quite make a match, but the resemblance in the aura was unsettling. The quiet power, the intensity. It sparked a strange, almost spiritual feeling in Leo. It wasn't just a random act of kindness. It felt like a deliberate, meaningful gesture. He knew one thing for sure. He couldn't just spend the money and forget about it. This $100 bill felt different. It felt like a key to a door he hadn't known existed. He had to understand. He had to know why. And a part of him, a hopeful, slightly crazy part, wondered if he might see the man again. He felt a deep, inexplicable pull, a sense that this wasn't the end of the story, but just the beginning. The glimmer of gold in his hand felt like a promise, or perhaps a whispered challenge. The morning light filtering weakly through his dusty window blinds did little to dispel the surreal feeling from the night before. Leo woke up, his mind instantly going to the $100 bill still lying on his table. He reached out his fingers, tracing the outline of Benjamin Franklin's face. It was still there. It wasn't a dream. He got up, stretched, and made himself a cup of instant coffee. His usual morning routine felt different, lighter. The anxiety about bills, about making rent, was still there. A low hum beneath the surface, but for today, for this morning, it was quieter. The $100 was a buffer, a breathing room he hadn't had in months. But the money itself wasn't what occupied his thoughts the most. It was the man, the silent, mysterious stranger in the suit and sunglasses. Leo kept replaying the scene. The man's unblinking stare, the deliberate movement, the quiet drop of the bill. It felt less like a casual donation and more like a significant act, almost ritualistic. He found himself pacing his small apartment, the coffee growing cold in his hand. What kind of person drops $100 on a street performer without a word? Not a drunk, not a show-off. This man had an air of purpose, of quiet determination. Was he a philanthropist, a secret millionaire, or was there something deeper? Leo pulled out his phone again, searching for anything related to Elvis and his inner circle. He typed in Elvis Presley friends, Elvis Presley entourage, Elvis Presley lost relatives. He knew it was a long shot, a desperate attempt to find a connection where there might be none, but he couldn't shake the feeling. The man's presence had been too powerful, too knowing. It was as if he recognized something in Leo's performance that others didn't. He stumbled across old articles, grainy black and white photos of Elvis with various people. His Memphis Mafia, his musicians, his family. He squinted at the faces, trying to find a match for the silver-haired man. Nothing jumped out, but he learned more about Elvis's character, his immense generosity, his love for his fans, his deep connection to his music. The more he read, the more he felt that the $100 bill wasn't just a random act of kindness. It felt like it carried a piece of that spirit he thought about his own performance yesterday. He had sung "Can't Help Falling in Love" with a particular earnestness, "Suspicious Minds" with raw emotion, and "Jailhouse Rock" with joyful abandon. Had one of those songs struck a chord with the man? Or was it the way Leo felt the music, the way he poured his soul into it, that resonated? He'd always tried to honor the original artists, to capture the essence of their songs. Not just their notes. Maybe that's what the man had seen. He decided he couldn't just sit around. He had to go back to the square, not just to perform, but to look. He folded the $100 bill and placed it carefully back into his wallet. He wouldn't spend it yet. Not until he understood. It felt like a mission, not just a gift. Picked up his guitar, running his fingers over the worn strings. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about making money anymore, it was about something bigger. He tuned his guitar, the familiar notes. A comfort. He practiced a few Elvis songs, focusing on the emotion behind the lyrics, trying to channel that same passion he'd felt yesterday. He wanted to be ready, just in case the man appeared again. As he packed his gear, he thought about the street performer's code. You accepted donations, you didn't ask questions, you respected the anonymity of the giver. But this felt different. This was too significant to ignore. It felt like a riddle, a challenge. He adjusted his mic stand, noticing a slight bend in the metal. The money could fix that. It could buy him a better mic, a new amplifier. But he hesitated. He wanted to understand the why before he spent a single cent. He left his apartment feeling energized, a strange excitement bubbling beneath his usual anxieties. The city square was already bustling when he arrived. He set up his spot, choosing the same patch of pavement, hoping it might draw the man back. He started with a familiar melody. "Love Me Tender." His voice, infused with new purpose, seemed to carry further today. He watched the crowd scanning every face, looking for that distinct posture, that silver hair, those dark sunglasses. He sang for an hour, then 2. He played more Elvis songs he knew by heart, songs that always seemed to draw a crowd. He noticed familiar faces among the regulars, the old woman who sold flowers, the hot dog vendor, the young artist sketching portraits. He wondered if any of them had seen the man yesterday. He felt a little foolish searching for a stranger who might never return, but the pull was too strong to ignore. As the afternoon wore on, a sense of disappointment began to settle in. The man wasn't there. The flow of people was constant, but his distinctive figure was nowhere to be seen. Leo sighed, finishing a powerful rendition of "Hound Dog." He still played with passion, but the edge of anticipation was dulling. Maybe it really was just a random act of extreme generosity. A very wealthy person having a momentary whim. He was about to take a break when he saw her, the elderly woman who sold flowers. Her face, a rotat of wrinkles, was looking at him with a curious expression. She walked slowly towards him, her basket laden with bright blooms. "You sound good today, son," she said, her voice raspy but kind. "Very good," Leo smiled. "Thanks, Martha. Just trying to keep the king's spirit alive." Martha chuckled, a dry rustling sound. She paused, then leaned in a little closer, lowering her voice. "You had a special audience yesterday, didn't you?" Her eyes twinkled with a knowing light. Leo's heart leaped. "You saw him?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "The man in the suit?" Martha nodded slowly, her gaze thoughtful. "Oh, yes, I saw him. He's been around off and on for a while now. Never seen him drop a bill like that, though. Not on anyone. He just watches, listens." She paused, then added, "He reminds me of someone I used to see around here. A long time ago. A real gentleman. Always had a kind word." Leo's mind raced. Who, Martha? Who did he remind you of? Martha just shook her head, a soft smile on her lips. "Ah, just an old memory, son. But that man yesterday, he had a certain air about him, like he carried the world on his shoulders, but still had a song." She patted his arm, a gentle, comforting touch. "Don't you worry. Some gifts are just meant to be, and some people, they just know what they're doing." She turned and shuffled away, leaving Leo standing there, his head buzzing. Martha had seen him, and she had mentioned a connection to the past, a real gentleman who carried the world on his shoulders. It wasn't concrete proof, but it was a thread, a whisper from the past, confirming that his intuition about the man was not entirely wrong. The mystery deepened, and with it Leo's resolve. He wasn't giving up. Martha's words echoed in Leo's mind long after she had moved on. "He reminds me of someone like the king himself." It wasn't much, just a hint, a vague connection. But for Leo, it felt like a confirmation. His intuition hadn't been playing tricks on him. The man in the suit wasn't just any wealthy benefactor. There was something more. He spent the rest of the day at the square singing, but also observing. He kept an eye on Martha, but she seemed engrossed in her flower sales, humming old tunes into her breath. He didn't want to press her, didn't want to seem too eager or strange. He knew street life operated on its own subtle rhythms. When he finally packed up, the $100 bill still nestled safely in his wallet. He felt a strange mix of fatigue and exhilaration. He hadn't seen the man again, but Martha's words had provided a new angle to his obsession. Someone from the past, someone connected to Elvis's aura. Back in his apartment, fueled by another cheap coffee, Leo dove deeper into his research. He searched for people who were known to be close to Elvis later in his life, people who might still be alive and still carried that distinct air Martha mentioned. He looked for photos of Elvis's friends, bodyguards, musicians, even distant relatives. He expanded his search to include older, more obscure interviews. He found stories of Elvis's legendary generosity. His sudden acts of kindness, like buying cars for strangers or showering friends with gifts, this reinforced Leo's feeling that the $100 bill was more than just money. It was an echo of that spirit, a continuation of a legacy. The man in the suit was carrying that torch in his own quiet way. One particular interview caught his eye. It was an old, somewhat blurry video clip from the late 1990s, featuring a former member of Elvis's touring band, a quiet, unassuming guitarist named Jesse Thorne. The man in the video was older, his hair gray, but his eyes held a familiar intensity, a deep wisdom. He spoke fondly of Elvis, not just as a superstar, but as a friend, a kind soul who was often misunderstood. Jesse spoke about the pressure Elvis lived under, the constant scrutiny, and how he often longed for normalcy, for genuine connection. What struck Leo about Jesse Thorne was his demeanor. He wasn't flashy or attention-seeking. He spoke with a quiet reverence for Elvis, a profound loyalty. And in his eyes, Leo saw a glimmer of that same intense gaze he'd seen behind the dark sunglasses. He couldn't be sure, of course. Jesse Thorne in the video was younger than the man in the suit would be now, but the essence, the feeling of the person, was similar. He searched for Jesse Thorne. It was difficult. The internet provided conflicting information. Some sources said he'd retired quietly. Others had no current information. He found an old forum where fans discussed Elvis's lesser-known band members. One post from years ago mentioned Jesse Thorne had inherited a significant amount of money from an unexpected source, allowing him to live comfortably. Another poster commented that Jesse was a private man, rarely seen, but occasionally spotted in Memphis or Los Angeles, still carrying himself with the same quiet dignity. Leo felt a surge of excitement. Could this be it? Could the man in the suit be Jesse Thorne or someone like him? Someone who had lived through the Elvis phenomenon, who carried a part of his legacy and who recognized that same spark in a young street performer? The thought sent shivers down his spine. It was a Longshollers bill wasn't just money anymore. It was a breadcrumb, a clue in a fascinating, heartwarming mystery. Leo decided he would use the money, but not for frivolous things. He would use it to help him continue his search, to maybe even travel if he needed to, though that seemed unlikely for now. He also wanted to use it to improve his music, to buy new strings, perhaps fix the muck stand properly. He felt a responsibility to honor the gift, to make it mean something. The next day, Leo returned to the square. He didn't just sing Elvis songs now. He poured all his newfound determination into his performance. He sang Heartbreak Hotel with a bluesy melancholy that brought tears to an elderly woman's eyes. He sang Love Me Tender with a tenderness that made couples hold hands tighter. He wasn't just performing. He was telling a story, his own story, interwoven with the king's. He kept an eye out for Martha. He waited until her flower basket was almost empty, and she looked ready to leave. "Martha," he called out softly, approaching her. "Can I ask you something else about that man?" Martha turned. "A kind glasses? What about him, son?" "You said he reminded you of someone you knew a long time ago, a gentleman. Did he have any other qualities you remember? Was he quiet, observant?" Leo asked. "Trying to paint a picture." Martha nodded slowly, her gaze distant as if reaching back through the years. "He was very quiet, but he noticed everything, always polite. And he loved music, truly loved it. Not just popular songs, but the way a song was felt. He was humble, too, despite he always had a certain melancholy about him, even when he smiled, like he carried a lot of love and a little sadness too." Leo listened intently, every word a confirmation. "And you said he reminded you of the king himself. Do you mean Elvis?" Martha chuckled softly. "Well, not Elvis exactly. Elvis was a force of nature, a sun. But this gentleman, he was more like the moon. Reflected light, but that light was very pure. His own light shone bright for those who knew to look." She gave Leo a knowing glance. "You have that same light, son. You sing from the heart. That's what people like him recognize." Leo felt a flush of warmth spread through him. "Thank you, Martha," he said genuinely. "That means a lot. Just keep singing, son," she advised. "Keep that light shining. Some seeds grow in mysterious ways." She then pointed a gnarled finger at his guitar. "You should get yourself some new strings, though. Those sound a bit tired. That man, he appreciated quality. He'd want you to have the best." Leo smiled, a deep, heartfelt smile. "I will, Martha. I absolutely will." He walked away from her feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Martha's words had affirmed his path. The man in the suit wasn't just a donor. He was a silent patron, a guardian of a legacy. The $100 wasn't just money. It was a blessing, a validation. And the whispers from the past were growing clearer, guiding him on a journey he never expected to take. He was no longer just a street performer. He was a seeker of truth, and the music was his guide. The conversation with Martha, however cryptic, had solidified Leo's resolve. The $100 bill wasn't just an incredible stroke of luck. It was a mission. He wouldn't spend it aimlessly. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, almost as if the money was entrusted to him. It needed to be used wisely, purposefully, and the first purpose was to understand its origin. His search began in earnest. Continued to perform in the square every day, but his eyes and ears were always open. He talked to other vendors, the pretzel seller, the caricature artist, the old man who sold newspapers. He asked casual questions, describing the man in the suit. Tall, silver hair, dark sunglasses, very well dressed. Came by yesterday, dropped a big bill. Most people just shrugged. Rich folks come and go. The pretzel seller grunted. Never pay attention to them. Too busy counting my own dough. Caricature artist. A young woman named Chloe, with bright, observant eyes, was a little more helpful. "Huh, silver hair, you say? I think I saw someone like that a few times." He never stopped for a caricature, though just seemed to be passing through, always alone. She paused, thoughtfully. He had a very still presence, like he was watching everything but not really part of it. This matched Martha's description and Leo's own impression. Still presence, watching everything. It was another small piece of the puzzle. The man wasn't just a casual passerby, he was an observer. Leo started, varying his performance times, hoping to catch the man at different hours. He also branched out to other busy areas of the city. Not just the square. He spent some of the money on bus fares traveling to different parks, other pedestrian zones, even occasionally standing near upscale hotels, just in case the man was a guest. He felt a bit like a detective, but his only clue was a gut feeling and $100. He also used some of the money to replace his worn-out guitar strings, as Martha suggested. The difference was immediate. His guitar sounded brighter, cleaner, more resonant. He felt a small thrill every time he played, knowing he was honoring the gift. He didn't buy a new mic or amplifier, yet those were bigger purchases, and he wanted to be sure. The $100 felt like a seed, and he wanted to make sure it blossomed, not just got spent. His music, too, began to evolve. The search, the mystery, had infused his performances with a new depth. He wasn't just singing Elvis songs. He was channeling an emotion, a sense of longing and connection that felt universal. He thought about Elvis's own search for meaning, his sometimes lonely life despite the fame. He felt a kinship with that struggle, with the desire to be truly seen and heard. One afternoon, while performing near a small, quiet park on the edge of the city, a less bustling area than his usual square, Leo noticed an elderly man struggling to carry a heavy bag of groceries up a flight of stairs. Without thinking, Leo stopped singing, put down his guitar, and rushed over. "Here, let me help you with that, sir," he offered, taking the heavy bag from the man's trembling hands. The old man, frail and with kind, watery eyes, looked up in surprise. "Oh, bless you, son, that's very kind of you." Leo carried the bag all the way up to the man's apartment door. It was a modest building, clearly old. The man fumbled with his keys, muttering, "Thanks. You're a good lad," he said finally, getting the door open. "Not many young people stop to help these days." "It's no problem at all," Sir Leo replied, genuinely happy to assist. He liked helping people. It felt good. As he turned to leave, the old man called out, "Wait, what were you playing down there? Sounded mighty fine." "Elvis Presley," Leo replied with a smile, just trying to keep his music alive. A flicker of something crossed the old man's face. Recognition, nostalgia. "Elvis, eh? I remember him. Used to see him now and then back in the day." Leo paused. "You did? You mean in person?" The man nodded, a faraway look in his eyes. "Oh yes, I worked as a doorman at a fancy hotel back when he first started getting big. He stayed there a few times. He was quite the character, very generous, always had a smile for everyone, even us little guys." He paused, a wistful smile on his lips. "And he had a friend, a quiet one. Never spoke much, but he was always with Elvis or nearby. A tall, serious fellow, always dressed nice. And he had eyes that seemed to see right through you. Silver hair? Dark sunglasses sometimes?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The old man frowned, thinking. Sunglasses, yes. Sometimes silver hair. Well, he was younger then, of course, but he did have very striking, light-colored hair. Even back then, not silver, but almost white blonde in some lights, he chuckled. Always looked after Elvis, kept an eye on things. They called him the Shadow, playfully because he was all playfully. The Crayful. "Ah, that was a long time ago, son. Names fade, but not faces or feelings. He was a good man, the Shadow, kind in his own quiet way, much like you. Helping an old man with his groceries," he winked. "You remind me a bit of him, actually. The way you carry yourself. You both have a good spirit." Leo felt a chill go down his spine. This was it. This was the connection. The old man, a random encounter, had given him the most profound clue. Yet, the Shadow, a quiet observer, someone close to Elvis, dressed well, with discerning eyes, and he too had noticed a similarity in Leo. He thanked the old man profusely, his heart pounding with excitement. He quickly returned to his guitar, but his mind was racing. The shadow. He had to find out more. This wasn't just a $100 mystery anymore. It was becoming a journey into the past, a connection to a legend and a discovery about himself. He felt as if the universe was guiding him, and the music was the compass. He still didn't know who the man was, but he knew he was closer. Much, much closer. Armed with the new information, the shadow. Leo returned to his apartment, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He immediately went to his computer, searching for any mention of an individual known as the Shadow in connection with Elvis Presley. The initial results were frustrating, mostly fan theories or metaphorical descriptions. But then he found a few obscure fan forums and deep dive articles that occasionally mentioned a man named Silas Blackwood. Silas Blackwood, the name felt significant even before he found confirmation. According to scattered reports, Silas was not a musician nor a manager, but a trusted confidant, a sort of personal assistant and security detail for Elvis in his early years. He was known for his unwavering loyalty, his quiet demeanor, and his almost uncanny ability to anticipate Elvis's needs. He was often described as being in the shadows, always present but rarely stepping into the limelight. Some stories even describe Silas as calming presence for Elvis, a grounding force amid the chaos of fame. He was said to have a deep respect for music and a keen eye for genuine talent. He eventually faded from public view. In the later years of Elvis's life or private life, away from the relentless media scrutiny, Leo looked for pictures of Silas Blackwood. It was challenging. Most photos were grainy from old newspapers or blurry paparazzi shots, where Silas was just a figure in the background. But in a few he could make out a tall, lean man with light-colored hair that might have gone silver with age. The jawline, the set of the shoulders, they seemed to match the mysterious benefactor, and the intense, discerning eyes, even in the blurry photos, hinted at the powerful gaze Leo had encountered. Particular detail mentioned in one article stood out. Silas Blackwood was known for his impeccable, understated style. He always wore tailored suits, even when Elvis was in jeans, and a t-shirt. He had a quiet elegance that was rarely seen. This detail resonated strongly with Leo's memory of the man in the square. This was it. This felt like the person Silas Blackwood, the silent, watchful guardian of Elvis, the man who saw things others didn't. The connection felt so strong, so right, that Leo felt a surge of validation. The $100 bill was no longer just a random act of generosity. It was a carefully chosen tribute, a gesture passed down through the generations from one who understood the king's heart to another who seemed to carry a piece of his spirit. But how to find him now? Silas Blackwood had seemingly vanished from public life decades ago. There were no current addresses, no social media profiles, no recent news articles. He was truly a man of the shadows. Leo knew he had to proceed carefully. He couldn't just knock on doors or publish a wanted ad. This was a private matter, a delicate dance between past and present. He decided to focus on what he did best, his music. He would continue to perform, continue to pour his heart into Elvis's songs, because that was what had drawn Silas to him in the first place. He felt that if Silas was indeed the man, he would appear again if he felt the time was right. He returned to his usual spot in the square the next day, and the day after. His music, now infused with a deeper meaning. He was no longer just singing for coins. He was singing as a tribute, as a message, as a way of connecting with a history he was slowly uncovering. He used some of the $100 to buy a proper mixstand, one that wouldn't wobble or threaten to collapse. It felt good, a tangible improvement, a sign of respect for the gift. He also bought a small new notebook. In it, he started jotting down observations, thoughts, and even lyrics that were inspired by his journey. He felt a newfound creative energy. The mystery of Silas, the connection to Elvis, it was all fueling his artistic spirit. One afternoon, as he was packing up his gear, a sleek, dark car pulled up to the curb a little way down the street. It was an expensive luxury vehicle, the kind you rarely saw him in the square, certain not stopping. Leo instinctively looked towards it. The back door opened and a figure emerged. Tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, silver hair glinting in the sunlight. Dark sunglasses. It was him. Silas Blackwood, or at least the man Leo now believed to be him. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of excitement and apprehension. He seemed to be waiting for someone looking down the street. Then a young woman, probably in her early 20s, rushed up to the car, carrying a large portfolio. She looked flustered, her hair a little disheveled. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm so sorry. The gallery meeting ran late. I hope I haven't kept you waiting too long." The man, Mr. Blackwood, turned to her, and Leo could almost feel the quiet power of his presence even from a distance. "Not at all, Miss Davies. Punctuality is a virtue, but so is thoroughness. Did the meeting go well?" His voice, though muffled by the distance, was deep, calm, and resonant, just as Leo had imagined. "Yes, excellent," she chirped, clearly relieved. "They loved the concept. I think we have a deal." Mr. Blackwood nodded, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "Excellent. Let's discuss it further in the car." He opened the back door for her with a gentlemanly gesture, and she slipped inside. As he was about to follow her in, Mr. Blackwood's gaze drifted across the square, a slow, sweeping motion. His eyes, hidden behind the dark lenses, seemed to pause just for a fraction of a second on Leo. A flicker, nothing more. Then he slid into the car, and the door closed with a soft thud. The car pulled away smoothly, disappearing into the city traffic. Leo stood frozen, his guitar case in his hand. He hadn't approached. He hadn't said anything. The opportunity had been there for a fleeting moment, but he hadn't taken it. Was it fear, or was it a sense that the moment wasn't right? He felt a strange mixture of frustration and relief. He had seen him. He had heard his voice. He had a name. Silas Blackwood. The encounter, brief as it was no longer a ghost from the past. A figment of imagination. He was real, and Leo had proof. The mystery was deepening. Yes, but the path forward was also becoming clearer. He knew what he had to do. He had to make himself known, not by chasing, but by continuing to perform, by letting his music be the beacon that called to Silas Blackwood. The $100 bill wasn't just a seed anymore. It was a key, slowly unlocking the secrets of a legacy. The fleeting encounter with Silas Blackwood left Leo buzzing with a new kind of energy. He had a name, a confirmed identity, and he had seen the man himself. Connection to Elvis, to the shadow, felt undeniably real. Now the challenge was to move from observation to conversation. Leo knew he couldn't just ambush Silas Blackwood. The man was clearly private and likely wealthy and well-connected. He had to be strategic, subtle. He continued to perform in the square, but now with an even greater sense of purpose. Every Elvis song he sang was a quiet message, an offering. He felt as if he was communicating directly with Silas through the timeless language of music. He imagined Silas, wherever he was feeling, the vibrations, sensing the spirit. He also decided to invest a little more of the $100. He went to a music store and bought a small, high-quality portable amplifier. It was a significant chunk of the money, but he knew it was necessary. A better sound would carry further, sound clearer, and signal a level of professionalism and dedication that matched the unexpected gift he'd received. When he plugged in his guitar, his voice soared crisp and full, filling the square with a rich, vibrant sound. It was like his music had finally found its true voice. The improvement was immediately noticeable. More people stopped, lingered longer. His tipples stopped, lingered longitable. The $100 wasn't just helping him survive, it was helping him thrive, helping him become a better performer. He was honoring the gift by making his art better. One brisk afternoon, a few days after seeing Silas's car, Leo was singing, "Are you lonesome tonight?" His voice was filled with a deep, soulful yearning, the raw emotion of the lyrics echoing through the square. closed his eyes, lost in the melody, letting the music wash over him when he opened them. He saw her. The young woman from the car, Miss Davies, was standing near the edge of his small crowd. She was still holding her large art portfolio, but she wasn't looking at him with casual curiosity. Her expression was one of intense interest, almost contemplation. She wasn't smiling, but her eyes held a spark of recognition. She waited until he finished the song and bowed to the applause. Then she walked directly towards him. Leo's heart quickened. "Excuse me," she said, her voice polite but firm. "Thank you," Leo replied, a little surprised. "Thank you," Leo replied. "I heard you singing the other day as well," she continued, "when I was with Mr. Blackwood. He seemed quite taken with your performance." Her eyes held a knowing glint. Leo took a breath. "This was Mr. Blackwood," he repeated slowly. "He was the one who he left a very generous tip in my case." He gestured towards his guitar case. Miss Davies nodded, a soft smile touching her lips. "Yes," he told me, "Mr. Blackwood is a man of few words, but he has an exceptional ear for music and a very discerning eye for character." She paused, then took a step closer, her voice dropping slightly. "He's been watching you for a while, you know. Not just yesterday. He comes to this square. Often he has a quiet routine. He enjoys the atmosphere, the music. He finds it authentic." Leo's mind raced. "He's been watching me. Why?" Miss Davies sighed, a wistful expression on her face. "Mr. Blackwood. He was very close to Elvis Presley. He was a trusted friend, a confidant, a man of absolute loyalty. He saw a lot of genuine people and a lot of fakes around the king. He can tell the difference, and he saw something in you, Leo. He saw a kindred spirit. He saw the king's heart in you. That reminded him of Elvis, someone who was always in the king's shadow but had his own light." Miss Davies' eyes widened slightly. "Martha, the flower lady. Ah, she knows more than she lets on. Yes, that's Mr. Blackwood. He chose that life to be behind the scenes, protecting the man he admired. He carries a lot of memories, Leo, and a great deal of quiet dignity." She paused, then pulled a small, elegant business card from her purse. "My name is Sarah Davies. I'm Mr. Blackwood's assistant. He's a very private man, but he asked me to give you this. He believes you have a special gift and he values genuine talent." Leo took the card. It was simple, elegant, with only a name and a discreet phone number. No company name, no title, just Silas Blackwood. What does he want?" Leo asked, his voice a little hoarse. Sarah smiled. "Something that could help you take your music to the next level, but it's entirely up to you." She glanced at her watch. "I have to go. My car is waiting, but please think about it, and don't hesitate to call the number. Mr. Blackwood isn't one to waste words, but he means what he says. He sees something precious in your music." She gave him a warm, encouraging smile, then turned and walked briskly towards a waiting car that had just pulled up. Leo stood there, the business card in his hand, his new amplifier humming softly behind him. The sky above him seemed brighter, the city sounds clearer. The mystery was unveiled. The secret was out. Silas Blackwood, the quiet legend, the shadow, had not only acknowledged him, but offered him a chance. A chance born from $100 bill, a captivating performance, and a deep unspoken connection to the king's legacy. His journey had just taken an unimaginable turn. Leo held the business card from Sarah Davies, his thumb tracing the elegant script of Silas Blackwood. The name, once a whisper from the past, now felt tangible, real. The full weight of the revelation settled on him. The man who had dropped the $100 bill, the quiet observer, was more than just a wealthy stranger. He was Silas Blackwood, the shadow, Elvis Presley's closest, most trusted confidant. He was a living bridge to the king's legacy, and he had chosen Leo. The warmth that spread through Leo was profound. It wasn't just the money or even the potential opportunity. It was the validation. To be recognized by someone who had seen Elvis himself, truly seen him, and to be told that his music carried a piece of that authentic spirit. It was overwhelming. It filled him with a quiet confidence he hadn't known he lacked. He went home that evening not to his usual cheap dinner, but to a feeling of deep contemplation. He looked at his guitar, at his new, better-sounding amplifier, purchased with part of the initial gift. Every note he played now felt imbued with a new meaning. He wasn't just performing for tips anymore. He was performing for something greater. For a legacy. He spent hours thinking about Sarah's words. He believes you have a special gift. He wants to ensure that the spirit of music, the kind that moves people, continues. This wasn't just about a record deal or fame. This was about something deeper, something spiritual. It was about carrying a torch. The next morning, after much deliberation, Leo took a deep breath and dialed the number on the card. His heart pounded with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The phone rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. Blackwood residence, Sarah Davies speaking. Hi, Sarah, Leo said, trying to keep his voice steady. It's Leo, the street performer from the square. Ah, Leo, I'm glad you called. Mr. Blackwood was hoping he would, Sarah replied, her voice warm and welcoming. He's available now if you'd like to speak with him. Yes, please, Leo managed. There was a brief pause, then a familiar deep voice came on the line. Leo, it's Silas Blackwood. Leo felt a shiver. Mr. Blackwood, he said, his voice a little hoarse. Thank you for everything. The money, the recognition. No need for thanks, son, Silas said, his voice calm and clear, just as Leo remembered from the brief car conversation. It was merely an acknowledgement of truth. You sing with a rare honesty. It's a quality I've come to recognize and to cherish. Sarah told me about your connection to Elvis, Leo ventured. Indeed, Silas said, a hint of melancholy in his tone. I knew him well. I saw him at his highest and at his lowest. He was a complex man, immensely gifted, incredibly generous. He loved music more than anything, and he loved to give. He would have loved your spirit. Leo, the way you sing with your whole heart. It's rare in this world. Leo was speechless for a moment, absorbing the praise, the connection to the king himself. I just try to honor his music, he finally said. And you do, Silas affirmed. More than just the notes you carry, the feeling. That's what matters. That's what Elvis always sought in others, and what he valued in music. He paused. I observe a great deal. Leo, I've been watching you for some time. Now your dedication, your perseverance, even when the crowds are thin, your genuine love for the music, and your kindness, my kindness. Leo asked, surprised, the other day when you helped that old gentleman with his groceries, I saw that small acts of genuine kindness speak volumes. Elvis valued that above all else. It was about connecting with people, about making their lives a little brighter. You carry that same light, Leo. He hadn't realized anyone had seen him help the old man, let alone that it had been Silas himself. The $100 bill, then, was not just a random act of generosity. It was a test, a validation, a recognition of something deeper than just musical talent. I have a proposition for you, Leo, Silas continued, his voice calm and deliberate. It would be a place for you to truly hone your craft, and if you're open to it, I would be happy to share some of my experiences, some of what I learned from being around. Leo's mind reeled. A private studio. Guidance from Silas Blackwood. This was dream he hadn't even dared to dream. It was a dream he hadn't even dared to dream. Mr. Blackwood? Leo stammered. I don't know what to say. It's incredible. I would be honored, but why me? Silas chuckled softly. A warm, genuine sound. Consider this, not a handout, but an investment. An investment in the continuation of a certain kind of magic. Leo closed his eyes, a profound sense of gratitude washing over him. The $100 bill, initially a mystery, had become a bridge. A bridge, not just to a comfortable life, but to a profound legacy. The king had indeed dropped $100 in his hat. Not literally, but through the quiet, discerning hand of Silas Blackwood, the keeper of his heart. And in that gesture, a new melody, a new chapter was ready to unfold. A week later, Leo found himself standing in front of a modest, unassuming building on a quiet street a few blocks away from the bustling city square. There was no flashy sign, no grand entrance, just a simple wooden door with a small brass plaque that read, Harmony House. This was Silas Blackwood's private studio. Pushed the doorbell, his heart thumping with a mix of excitement and awe. The door opened almost immediately, revealing Sarah Davies. She smiled warmly. Leo, welcome. Mr. Blackwood is expecting you. She led him through a small, elegant reception area into a spacious, soundproofed room. It was everything Leo had ever dreamed of. State-of-the-art recording equipment, a beautiful grand piano in one corner, several guitars. The air felt clean, quiet, filled with the potential of music. Silas Blackwood was standing by a window looking out onto a small manicured garden. He turned as Leo entered, his silver hair catching the light. He still wore a dark suit, but today, without the sunglasses, Leo could finally see his eyes. They were a startling pale blue, deep-set, and incredibly observant. They held a quiet sadness, but also an unwavering warmth. Leo, Silas said, extending a hand. His grip. I trust Sarah has shown you around. It's incredible, Mr. Blackwood, Leo managed, looking around in wonder. More than I could have ever imagined. It's a place for quiet creation, Silas replied, a faint smile touching his lips. A sanctuary? Please, make yourself at home. He gestured to a comfortable armchair. They sat and Silas poured them both a cup of herbal tea. The silence was comfortable, filled with an unspoken understanding. Leo found it easy to be around Silas despite the man's formidable presence. I wanted to speak with you directly, Leo, Silas began, his gaze steady. To explain why I offered this, as Sarah mentioned, I knew Elvis well from his earliest days in Memphis. Through the dizzying heights, he was a force of nature, yes, but he was also profoundly human, and what truly made him special beyond his voice and his charisma was his heart. Silas leaned forward slightly, his eyes holding a faraway look. Elvis was incredibly generous. He loved to give, not just money, but himself. His kindness was legend misunderstood, seen as impulsive or a way to buy affection. It wasn't. It came from a deep place of empathy, a desire to share his blessings and to connect with people on a genuine level. He hated pretense. He hated phonies. It reminded me of Elvis, in his quiet moments, when he was just singing for himself, for the pure joy of it. Leo felt a lump in his throat. To be compared to Elvis, not the superstar but the man, the genuine artist, it was the highest compliment he could receive. I saw you help that old man. You passed the test admirably. I felt a responsibility to it, Leo admitted. It felt like a gift from something bigger. Like it came from Elvis himself. Silas smiled, a rare, gentle smile that lit up his pale blue eyes. In a way, it did. His spirit lives on in acts of kindness, in genuine artistry. He always wanted his music to reach people, to touch their hearts, and you, Leo, you do that. You carry a piece of his heart in your voice. What you offer me, it's life-changing, Leo said, his voice thick with emotion. It is an opportunity, nothing more, Silas replied. To grow, to explore, to create, without the constant pressure of making ends meet. You can use this studio as much as you need. There will be no cost, no obligation, only a request that you continue to pursue your music with the same passion and honesty. And if you ever want to discuss music, or life, or Elvis, my door will always be open." He gestured to a corner of the studio where a worn, leather-bound book lay on a small table. "That's Elvis's personal songbook," Silas said softly. "His handwritten notes, his scribbles, his thoughts on the music. I've kept it safe for decades. I want you to have access to it, to learn from it, to feel his presence through it. It's not for public display, Leo, but for personal inspiration." Leo stared at the book. This was more than money. It was an inheritance, a sacred trust, a bridge to a legend. "The king gave away Cadillacs," Silas concluded, his voice laced with a quiet reverence. "But his greatest gifts were always at the heart. He saw potential, he saw struggle, and he acted with boundless generosity. I am simply carrying on a small part of that legacy. And you, Leo, you are the recipient, and I believe in time." Leo picked up the songbook, feeling the worn leather, the weight of history in his hands. He looked at Silas Blackwood, the quiet guardian of a legend, and knew that his life had irrevocably changed. The $100 had unlocked a door, not just to a studio, but to a deeper understanding of music, kindness, and the enduring heart of the king. The following months were a whirlwind of change and growth for Leo. Silas Blackwood's studio, Harmony House, became his sanctuary. He spent hours there, immersing himself in music, composing new songs, and refining his voice. The state-of-the-art equipment allowed him to experiment, to record his ideas, and to hear his music with a clarity he'd never experienced. But the greatest gift wasn't just the studio. It was Silas's quiet mentorship. Silas never lectured or demanded. He was simply present, a steadying force. They would meet weekly, sometimes just for tea, sometimes to listen to Leo's new compositions. Silas would offer gentle feedback, disciple observations about emotional delivery or lyrical resonance. He would share anecdotes about Elvis, not sensational stories, but intimate glimpses into the king's creative process, his struggles, his triumphs, and most importantly, his heart. Leo pored over Elvis's songbook, his fingers tracing the king's own handwriting. It felt like a direct line to the legend, a profound connection that transcended time. He learned about Elvis's dedication, his vulnerability, his ceaseless pursuit of emotional honesty in his music. This deepened Leo's own understanding of his craft, making his performances even more soulful and authentic. He continued to perform in the square, but now with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. The better sound system drew larger crowds, and his voice, refined by hours in the studio, captivated listeners. He still accepted tips, of course, but the desperation was gone. He was singing because he loved it, because it was his purpose, not just his survival. He even used some of his growing income to occasionally buy meals for other struggling street performers, passing on the kindness he had received. He remembered Elvis's generosity and Silas's quiet acts, and felt compelled to do the same. The initial $100 bill, though now technically spent on the amplifier and other small necessities, had truly been an investment. It had not only improved his equipment, but had opened a door to Silas, to the studio, and to a level of artistic growth he could never have achieved on his own. It was the catalyst for everything. One sunny afternoon, as Leo was setting up in the square, Martha, the flower lady, approached him. "You're sounding stronger than ever, son," she said, her eyes twinkling. "And that new sound system. Someone must be looking out for you." Leo smiled. A genuine, joyful smile. "Someone is, Martha. Someone very special." He knew she understood. "That's good," she nodded, her gaze sweeping over the bustling square. King always looked out for his own and those who carry his spirit. She gave him a knowing look, then shuffled off to sell her blooms. As weeks turned into months, Leo began to attract more serious attention. A small, independent record label, known for nurturing unique talent, heard him play and offered him a modest contract. It wasn't overnight fame, not yet, But it was a step, a tangible sign that his journey was truly beginning. Consulted with Silas, who, with a quiet smile, encouraged him to follow his path. Elvis never shied away from the spotlight, Leo, Silas had said, but he never let it consume him either. Remember why you sing? Remember the heart. Leo's debut single, an original song that blended his acoustic style with a hint of Elvis's soulful melancholy, began to gain traction on local radio. He was no longer just the Elvis guy on the street. He was Leo, an artist in his own right, profoundly influenced by a legend, but with his own unique voice and story. His life was still humble, but it was filled with meaning. He lived simply invested in his music and always remembered the kindness that had launched his journey. He visited Silas regularly at Harmony House, their conversations a treasured part of his life. Silas remained his quiet mentor, his confidant, the living embodiment of a legacy. One evening, after a particularly fulling day in the studio, Leo was leaving Harmony House. He paused at the door, looking back at the quiet building. He thought about the single $100 bill, dropped silently into his hat. All those months ago, it wasn't just paper. It was a catalyst. A message. A profound act of faith from a man who carried the king's heart. He knew that the king hadn't literally dropped the money, but in every sense that truly mattered, he had. Through Silas Blackwood, the quiet, watchful shadow who had seen a spark of Elvis's own soul in a struggling street performer. The legacy of kindness, of generosity, of pure, heartfelt music had been passed down. And Leo, the street performer who once sang for coins, now sang with a purpose far grander than he could have ever imagined, carrying a new melody into the world. A melody born from the heart of the king,